Have you ever heard of a place so old it seems to predate time itself? Tonight, we journey to Briarstone Cemetery, a place locals whisper was here long before the town it serves. No one knows who laid the first stones or who claimed the land. It simply appeared, shrouded in mist and mystery. And if you're brave enough, or foolish enough, to be there at the stroke of midnight, you'll hear it. A rhythmic, unsettling sound, metal scraping against earth. Slow, steady, the sound of someone digging a fresh grave. Most people dismiss it as a campfire story, a local legend to scare tourists. But legends are born from whispers of truth, aren't they? A group of teenagers, Ethan, Maya, Jordan, and Lexi, decided to put the legend to the test. The dare was simple. A rite of passage for the town youth. Survive 1 hour inside Briarstone Cemetery after the clock strikes 12. They saw it as a game, a thrill to break the monotony of their small town lives. They had no idea they were stepping into a story from which they might never return. The moment their sneakers crossed the threshold of the rusted wrought iron gates, the world changed. The air, once cool and crisp with the autumn night, grew heavy and suffocating, pressing in on them from all sides. The familiar sounds of the night, the gentle breeze rustling through leaves, the distant hum of the highway, the chirping of crickets all vanished. They were plunged into a silence so profound, so absolute, it felt alive, like a predator holding its breath. It was the kind of quiet that makes you hear your own heartbeat pounding in your ears, a frantic drum against the stillness. They ventured deeper, their flashlights cutting nervous beams through the oppressive dark. They passed row after row of crooked tombstones, their marble faces stained by time and weather. The names were carved so deep, so aggressively. They looked less like the work of a stonemason's chisel and more like they'd been clawed out by something desperate. Each marker seemed older than the last, names fading into obscurity, stories lost to the ages. And then it began, a faint sound, carried on the dead air. As the unmistakable scrape of a shovel digging into soil. It was exactly like the stories said. The sound was methodical, patient, and it sent a cold dread snaking up their spines. Jordan, ever the skeptic, tried to break the tension with a nervous laugh. It's probably just a groundskeeper, guys. Working a late shift, but his voice lacked conviction. Lexi, who had grown up on the town's folklore, shook her head, her eyes wide in the gloom. "No way," she whispered, her voice trembling. "There hasn't been a groundskeeper working at Briarstone in over 60 years. The town council cut the funding. No one comes here at night." The sound echoed again, closer this time. As it was a siren's call, pulling them deeper into the cemetery's dark heart. Against their better judgment, they followed it. The sound led them to the oldest section of the cemetery, a forgotten corner where ancient oaks leaned over the graves like hunched old men. The air here was colder still, clinging to their skin like a damp shroud. And then they saw it, a single lantern, flickering in the darkness. Its light was a sickly, jaundiced yellow, swaying gently as if being carried by an unseen hand. It cast long, dancing shadows that twisted the familiar shapes of trees and tombstones into monstrous figures. The digging sound was coming from right beside it. Driven by a morbid curiosity they would soon regret, the 4 teens ducked behind a large, moss-covered mausoleum, peering out into the clearing. The digging stopped. The sudden silence was even more terrifying than the sound had been. A shadow detached itself from the deeper darkness. It was tall, impossibly thin, and wore a wide-brimmed hat that obscured its features. In its grasp was a long, rusted shovel that seemed almost as tall as the figure itself. The lantern swung from its other hand, its weak light catching on the damp earth of a freshly dug pit. The figure stepped into the edge of the light, a silhouette of pure dread. Ethan's breath hitched. "Who is that?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. Maya, her face pale as a tombstone, grabbed his arm. Her words were a choked whisper, filled with a dawning, terrible recognition. "That's him. It's the Midnight Gravedigger." The legend wasn't just a ghost story. The story said he wasn't a spirit haunting his own grave. He was something far worse. He was a collector. Every year, on a moonless night, he comes to Briarstone. He digs one grave, not for the dead, but for the living. An empty grave, waiting patiently for whoever is foolish enough to disturb him, to watch him work. As if sensing their thoughts, the figure turned. It moved with an unnatural slowness, its head tilting as if it had heard their panicked breaths across the clearing. The lantern swung around, and the dim light finally fell upon its face. It was a sight that would be burned into their minds forever. The skin was gray and leathery, stretched tight over a skull-like visage. Its cheeks were hollow, its lips a thin, bloodless line. But the eyes were the worst. They were just deep, dark sockets, voids that seemed to have been burned out. Yet they felt them, staring right at them, through them. A wave of pure primal fear washed over the teenagers, rooting them to the spot. Then, the figure lifted one long, bony hand. It didn't beckon. It didn't wave. It simply pointed. A single, skeletal finger aimed directly at the fresh, open grave beside him. An invitation. A low, rumbling tremor started beneath their feet. It wasn't an earthquake. It was something even more sinister. The ground itself seemed to writhe. Tree roots shifted like waking serpents, and the soil around them began to crack and heave, as if the cemetery itself was trying to hold them back, to deliver them to the gravedigger. The spell of terror was finally broken by Maya's scream, a raw, piercing sound that shattered the unholy silence. "Run!" They all scrambled to their feet, turning to flee back the way they came. They sprinted towards the distant gates, their lungs burning, their legs pumping with adrenaline-fueled desperation. But the path seemed to fight them. The familiar trail twisted and turned in impossible ways. Every corner they rounded, every fork they took, somehow led them back towards the center of the cemetery. No matter which direction they ran, they could always see it the faint, sickening glow of the gravedigger's lantern, pulling them back like a moth to a deadly flame. The scraping sound started again, much closer this time. It was faster now, more urgent, as if he knew his prize was trying to escape and he was digging with renewed vigor to welcome them. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of running in circles, they saw the gates. They burst through them, collapsing onto the dew-soaked grass outside, gasping for air, their bodies still trembling uncontrollably. Behind them, the sound stopped. The oppressive silence lifted. The crickets began to chirp again, as if nothing ever happened. They didn't look back. They ran all the way home, locking their doors, convinced it was a shared nightmare. But nightmares end when you wake up. The next morning, the town sheriff, making his routine patrol, noticed something unusual at old Briarstone Cemetery. Just inside the gates, where there had been only overgrown grass the day before, stood for new headstones. They looked as if they had been there for a century, weathered and ancient, yet they were undeniably new. Each pristine stone was carved with the exact same, chilling message. Reserved, and beneath that single word, etched deep into the granite, were 4 names. Ethan, Maya, Jordan, Lexi. The graves behind the stones were waiting. Still open, still empty, but not for long. Thank you for joining us for another tale from Whispers in the Dark. If you enjoyed this journey into the shadows, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more chilling stories. Stay safe, and whatever you do, don't go digging for answers in the dark.